Welcome, all of my friends, to the Alyosha Society, where we're pursuing truth and beauty and goodness, and we're doing it through great literature. I want to welcome you to the first video of a 7-video series on T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land. Yeah, this is video number 1 out of, what did you say? 1 out of, okay, fine, I'll just say it, 7. I know, Bruce, this poem, it's a poem. It's like 4 pages long. I know. You don't understand, guys. This poem is a beast. It's actually going to take 7 videos, and 3 of those, the first 3, all right, don't start throwing things, are actually going to be background. Yeah. Honestly, guys, most people just do this when they read this poem. Yeah. And then the other half end up just looking like this. Yeah, after attempting this poem. No, you'll see what I'm saying. This is not like a Shakespearean sonnet or a haiku. This is a very tremendously complicated poem, but maybe the most important poem that you'll ever read / study / discuss. So without further ado, just trust me. Trust me that we do actually need that much time. Let's get right to it. Let me go ahead. The first thing I want to do is I want to show you. Yeah, here we go. It's on. I want to show you the makeup here. So this video, for those of you who took the Great Books 3 course, you've already had this content. I'm just going to tell you that. It's going to be review, but we're doing a poem, so I want to do an introduction to poetry in general. So this video is not going to have a whole lot, well, hardly anything to do with The Waste Land, but it's going to be an introduction to poetry, and it's a poem, so that's important. The second video, we'll do the biographical and historical background material on T.S. Eliot. Remember, we're doing our historical biographical approach. We have to know a lot about him, and this poem was published in 1922. If you don't understand the times, what was going on in the world, Europe, the United States, the poem's not going to make any sense. And then I know it seems like overkill, but you got to trust me. I'm going to do an entire video just introducing The Waste Land. Yeah, I know. It seems like a lot. And then we'll do parts. It has 5 parts, the poem does. You can see how I've outlined them there. 1, 2, then we'll do 3 and 4 together. 3 is super short, and then we'll do part 5. So this is video number 1, and I want to just dive in here. You know what the literary toolbox is. I've only been discussing it for dozens and dozens of videos. The literary toolbox, those tools that we pull out and we use them to better understand what we're reading, because what do we believe? Better understanding, more enjoyment. Less understanding, I hate this. Okay, look, I've been doing this for a long time. That's the way it works. That's the way it works. So we're going to pull out, the first tool we're going to pull out of our toolbox is the genre tool. Genre questions, and that's what I'm doing in this video, is just talking about poetry in general, and then we'll get to historical biographical context. There's not going to be a plot here. You'll understand what I mean when we get through. There's no plot. We will be talking about literary devices. So let's just jump right into it. Poetry. It's really fascinating to me that if you just try to give a definition to poetry, it's actually not that easy. You kind of throw out all these ideas, but that's prose or that's this. But if you look it up, poetry, first of all, it's usually metrical. That is, it has a rhythm, or it has so many syllables per line, or a sonnet, Shakespearean sonnet has 14 lines. It's written in iambic pentameter. The Homeric epics written in dactylic hexameter, so forth. So that's going to be important when you see what Eliot is going to do with poetry when for thousands of years, these have been sort of the, presuppositions, the assumed things about poetry. So poetry tends to be what sets it apart from other genres. It tends to be imaginative. It tends to use maybe single words or smaller phrases to, it's sort of like a word is worth 1,000 words, or a word is worth 1,000 pictures, the other way around. Imaginative. It's meant to elicit an emotional response in a much shorter space, but it does it through meaning, sometimes through sound, and sometimes through a particular rhythm. Now, you'll remember if you took Great Books 3 that I told you poetry is like baseball, or all the genres, literature in general. If you know what the rules are, then it just makes a lot more sense. And friends, that is just a general truth about genre. By the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning of my video, did you notice the shirt I decided to go with here for the Wasteland? It is blah, brownish, grayish. I mean, I looked through my closet and I thought, I need Wasteland. What says Wasteland? I mean, it's a nice shirt, but the color is just, it kind of blends in with the, 500-year-old books behind me here. But anyway, if you know the rules, it makes a lot more sense. The types of poetry that I have been stressing with you: Hebrew poetry, and I'm kind of going chronologically here a little bit. Epic poetry, that's Homer and Virgil, basically. Italian poetry, Dante. Sonnet poetry, Shakespeare. And then modern poetry. I think you already know where Eliot is going to fit in. He's definitely going to be strong on the modern poetry. But I want to walk through these because here's the deal. You're welcome. I just want you to be educated on these things. I want you to know these terms. And I want you to be able to think more broadly about a topic than the very narrow, specific thing that we happen to be reading at that time and how it fits into the overall context. So Hebrew poetry, of course, is most of the Old Testament is poetry. So when we say Hebrew poetry, we're talking about Isaiah, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. We're talking about most of the Old Testament. But here's the thing about Hebrew poetry. Yeah, about a third of the entire Bible. Did you know that? So again, that's another reason. I know this doesn't have anything to do with T.S. Eliot. I know that. But this is just good to know. Hebrew poetry works in the realm of parallelisms. What that means is it doesn't rhyme sounds. Roses are red, violets are blue. I love great books 4, and so should you. Okay, that's rhyming sounds. That's not what Hebrew poetry rhymes ideas. It's thought-based. Okay, so I want to use 2 examples to remind you if it's, your second time going through this, or to show you if it's your first time. Proverbs 16:16 and Psalm 1:6. Let me show you what I mean by parallelisms. There are 2 main kinds, synonymous and antithetical. How much better it is to get wisdom than gold, to get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. Now, see, friends, if you look at that verse, it's really saying the same thing twice. And it does it for emphasis. It does it to make it better, easier to memorize. It sticks with you and it drives home the point. And since Hebrew poetry doesn't rhyme sounds, it's still cool even when you translate it into another language. All right, are you digging me? You see that? Okay, so synonymous parallelism. Now, the other one is called an antithetical parallelism. And so, in other words, the second idea is the opposite as the first idea. The Lord knows the way of the righteous, the way of the ungodly shall perish. Well, you can look at the word perish And you can say, when the Lord knows the way, what that really means is they're going to experience the opposite of perishing. They're going to experience life eternal. So Hebrew poetry is unique in that it rhymes sounds, not ideas. Okay, let's see. Hang on, getting my. All right, there we go. Sorry, something happened with my screen share there. All right, the second kind of poetry I want us to take a look at here is epic poetry. And you're welcome. You're very, very welcome. Hold on, guys. I've got a little bit of a glitch in my system here that I'm just having a hard time dealing with. Just hang tight. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Let me get back over to my screen share. Blah blah blah. There we go. Now I tried to make this a little bit easier for you. What is it? What is epic poetry? Okay, well, I came up with a little acronym for you. EPIC. It is an extremely long poem, there's your E and your P, about an incredible hero, which highlights a culture. So EPIC. Now, when people are talking about Homer's Odyssey or Homer's Iliad or Virgil's Aeneid, these are the great ancient epics, you know exactly what they are. They're longer, they're poetry because they do have meter, they're written in dactylic hexameter. I won't explain what that is right now, but I've got videos on my YouTube channel if you want to check those out. But there's a hero, Odysseus or Achilles or Aeneas in the Aeneid, which highlights something about what that culture values. Odysseus, Greek culture, Aeneas, Roman culture. So there you go. That's epic. So we have Hebrew poetry, rhymes, ideas, epic poetry, EPIC. Oh, actually, I forgot that I had an example here for you from the Aeneid. Yeah, so I will get into dactylic hexameter briefly. Dactylic hexameter, dactyl just means finger. And you notice when you look at your finger that you have a long part of your finger, then two little shorts. That's da, da, da. So it's like a finger. So the rhythm, the meter is kind of like what your finger looks like. Da, 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 long, short, short. Hex just means six. So it means there are six fingers in every line. Arma, virumque cano, Troiaque pribus aboris, Italiam fato profugus Laviniaque veni. So I'm not very good at, yeah, I know. No, stop. No, it's not. It's not very good. But I just wanted to give you a feel of maybe what epic poetry might sound like. Now, this is one of my favorites because it's just so stinking cool. Is Italian poetry. It's melodious. It's harmonious. It's called terza rima. Terza rima. You know, you can see the word three in the terza and then rhyme. So these are tercets, which are 3-line stanzas, which have this rhyme scheme. And I'm going to show you an example of this, and it's just really cool. So ABA, then you take the B out of that first line, and the B now becomes the new A. And then you get a new sound for the middle. So now it's BCB, but then you take the C out, and it becomes the new A/B, CDC. Do you see that? Sorry, no pun intended. Well, if it doesn't make any sense, I'll tell you what, I am going to torture you with a little bit of reading from Dante's Inferno. Now, do you see on the end there, fattore amore? That's an A and an A, so it starts A, B, A, but then the B comes out, that potestate, and it becomes the new A. That's the create and the entrate, and then duro becomes a C, and then in the next line, you'd have uro, and something new in between. So Justitia mos il mio alto fattore, fecimi la divina podestate, la somma sapienza il primo amore. Dinanzi a me non fur cose create, again, the B now becomes the A, se non eterne e io eterno duro, lasciate ogni speranza voi entrate. I think if you got someone who actually knows what they're doing, you know, and can read passages from Dante's Inferno, and you hear this, it's mesmerizing. It's mesmerizingly beautiful. It really is. All right, now that brings us up, moving along chronologically. We've done the Hebrew poetry, epic poetry, and Dante's Inferno. Now we move to 16th century with sonnet poetry. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of sonnets. I'm just going to highlight the way Shakespeare wrote his 154 sonnets. They were written as all of them. They have the exact same structure. 14 lines. Iambic means double it. It means two of them. Pent means 5. So 2 times 5 means you'd have 10 syllables or 10 feet in that line. Yeah, so 14 lines, 10 syllables in each line. And the rhyme scheme looks like, well, I have it right there. A, B, A, B. New set for the next 4 lines. C, D, C, D. New set, E, F, E, F. And then ba-ba. There's always this, you know, a little 1-2 punch at the end of Shakespeare's sonnets. G. It's a new sound, and it just kind of grabs you at the end. Let's just take a look at sonnet number 18. It's probably the most well-known. Shall I compare to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate, A, B. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date, A, B. Now, new sounds. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, BC, and every fair from fair sometime declines by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. Okay, and then CD, and EF. And then look at the little 1-2 punch at the end. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, that is the poetry. And this poetry, this gives life to thee. And what he's saying here is that his friend, who is wonderful and amazing, is going to live forever in the poem. He's immortalized in verse. Yeah. I got a whole video on Shakespeare sonnets if you want to check it out, if that's your thing. But anyway, that brings me to modern poetry. Now, what is distinct about modern poetry? Well, for some of you, you're going to love it. Others of you are going to get frustrated, because if you like order and structure and predictability, you may not like modern poetry, because modern poetry is a little bit of a free-for-all. It doesn't necessarily rhyme, doesn't necessarily have a meter, doesn't necessarily have really a structure of any kind. Okay, so that's just the way it is. It doesn't really have a lot of rules to it. But philosophically, and we'll get into this later, so I'm not even going to touch on it now. Philosophically, that's important, because it actually lines up with the philosophical worldview of the 20th and 21st centuries. And we'll talk about why later. But I did come up with one example here. Maya Angelou, who has written a lot of just wonderful poetry. I have several volumes of her works. This one's called When Great Trees Fall. You know, it's sort of about like when famous, wealthy, powerful people, you know, when they bite the dust. This is just a portion of it. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder, lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. Now, see, you don't see some nice, neat, tidy rhyme scheme, but you can tell this reads like a poem. It doesn't read like a once upon a time, you know, narrative prose. And it's got a powerful message, but It's not as predictable and structured as Hebrew poetry, epic poetry, you know, sonnets, terza rima. And that's where we're going to be with T.S. Eliot. So there you have it, guys. Hebrew poetry, epic poetry, Italian poetry, the sonnets and modern poetry, and our quizzes and discussion boards and so forth. We'll be talking about these. So please be sure that you know what they are. Okay. All right. That wasn't too bad. Yeah. Okay. But we still have 2 more introduction videos to do. So we'll do Eliot in the next one, then an introduction to the poem. And then we'll actually, believe it or not, in the 4th video, we might actually start the poem. So thanks for hanging out. We'll be talking about T.S. Eliot in the next video. See you then.